This is RSN's Racing Pulse.
Welcome back to Racing Pulse. Just a bit of COVID breaking news. Victoria has recorded 7 new local cases, which are linked and in isolation. One of those cases was reported yesterday. Now, that is the case that is still to be traced, the Moonee Valley traffic officer at the COVID testing centre. But this morning, the cases overnight are all linked and all in isolation, which is good news. Maddie Stewart's going to have a bit of COVID news in particular regarding New South Wales. The RSN's racing editor joins us in the studio. Morning, Maddie.
Morning, Miguel.
And we also join on the line with some more COVID news for Victorian racing fans and participants. It is Greg Carpenter, and we're also going to have some news on where we're racing on Good Friday. Good morning to you, Greg. How are you?
I'm really well, Michael, and so I should be as we head back to the Valley on Saturday for the last race meeting of the season. Grand National Hurdle on Sunday at Sandown as we kick off the new racing season. And just a reminder to everyone that $16 million in additional prize money for the new racing season, which starts on Sunday, taking the overall prize money pool and bonuses here in Victoria to $280 million for the next racing season. So I'm looking forward to the week ahead, Michael.
There's no doubt about that. One thing, unfortunately, though, we won't have any crowds there. Is there any news on when we are likely to get back to the track?
Well, we've taken the direction of the government on this and decided that there won't be any crowds for the foreseeable future. Obviously, the current conditions and restrictions are in place until Tuesday, August the 10th. But as far as crowds returning to the racecourse, we're very much allowing the government to take the lead on this. And until further notice, there won't be any crowds attending racecourses for the next week or so at least.
So are you thinking that August 10 is the date that hopefully that will change?
Well, again, Michael, with COVID, it's such a moving feast. It's very encouraging, the stats that are coming up day by day on COVID, but there is the reality of the directions from the Chief Medical Officer. So we are very much allowing the government to take the lead on this, and we'll be directed by them, and we'll wait until we are able to welcome back owners and race goers to racetracks.
Thankfully, Maddie, we are doing a lot better than New South Wales, and there's some big news coming out of New South Wales in regards to COVID as well. You've spoken to Mark Van Gester. What's the situation there? They're moving race meetings as well. The Missile Stakes has been moved from Rosehill to Randwick because of this lockdown.
Because Randwick's out of not in a lockdown area, and Rosehill is. And the interesting situation, Greg, with track work up there as well, and trials, and with the LGAs, the local government areas, with so many of them in lockdown, and they contain tracks like Warwick Farm and Rosehill. Even the trials at Rosehill tomorrow, the star jockeys who are in a non-lockdown area, mostly around the Randwick area, aren't able to ride at those. So the trainers, it's not a major hindrance. I spoke to Richard Freeman about it. They're now enlisting track work riders instead of jockeys to fill the void for some big trials at Rosehill tomorrow. And I spoke to Richard Freeman. He said, well, we've got a lot of staff who we didn't even know. We've got a girl who we didn't know. She'd ridden 100 winners in the South Island of New Zealand. And so they're filling a void there. And Mark Van Gestel said as well that a lot of track work staff are basically just jockeys who got too big. So that's not a major hindrance. But I said, what if the Randwick area goes into lockdown? What if it's a sweeping lockdown situation? He said, we'll just have to deal with it as it comes. And if need be, we can shuffle race meetings to Newcastle, Scone, those sort of places, city meetings.
And Greg,
what we saw last year, Michael and Maddie in Victoria, is that the participants are extremely resilient. We went through the lockdown process last year. For a long time, we weren't holding any trials, and trainers and their staff did a great job getting us through. So I wish everyone in New South Wales and certainly within the racing industry all the best.
Last year we saw the situation re New South Wales trainers and jockeys. Currently, is it a 14-day quarantine situation for jockeys? And heading into our Spring Carnival, you would imagine it could well be still rampant in Sydney. If a Hugh Bowman, a James McDonald wants to come down here, is it a 14-day quarantine situation?
Well, again, it's a moving feast whether people from New South Wales can enter Victoria at all, or moving into a 14-day isolation period or a shorter isolation period. As we get towards the spring, no doubt these events will evolve. And rather than speculating now, we should be waiting until another month or so plays out. But I was talking to someone at Racing New South Wales yesterday, and they weren't overly optimistic that things would change in Sydney for a couple of months at least. So it's going to be something that we're going to have to deal with when we get to that point. But fortunately, here in Victoria, we are continuing to race, and outside of racing, good news that the general community have been allowed more freedoms post the government announcement yesterday.
One thing that Richard Friedman pointed out just regarding staff, I said, well, how many staff come from outside your LGA? Is there any restriction on them? Because he said not really. He said the LGAs are so big in Sydney that almost all of the staff are contained into the certain lockdown LGA and can circulate within that bubble within the stable. But he did say that they have to have a cleared test every 3 days, which only allows a 1-day window for staff between clearances and retesting. So they're hoping that the test results are going to start to come back a bit earlier, so they don't have that strange cycle of only having one clear day when they haven't been cleared from the previous test and so on. So,
hey, Greg, speaking of racing, there's an announcement today which you're about to make about where the first Good Friday meeting will be held in Victoria.
There is, Michael, great news. We announced a couple of weeks ago that with the government approval, hopefully, of an amendment to the Racing Legislation Act, we will be allowed to race on Good Friday here in Victoria next year, and we will be intending to do that. So very pleased to say, subject to that government approval, that the first ever meeting on Good Friday on April the 15th, 2022 will be held at Sale, the Sale Turf Club. We had I think it's a great initiative that the Good Friday meeting is going to be used to showcase regional Victoria, encourage people to visit regional Victoria, particularly after what we've been through over the last 12 months. And no doubt that Gippsland went through bushfires, they went through floods, they've been hit by COVID, the local tourism industry. So really pleased, in conjunction with Country Racing Victoria, to announce that the Sale Turf Club will hold that inaugural meeting on Good Friday, a meeting that is intended to rotate or to move throughout regional Victoria for the years after that. But the first inaugural meeting will be held at Sale.
Well, I think that's great for the local area, and touch wood, we're all open and able to make a weekend of it up there, a long weekend, which I think is part of the reasoning behind racing on the Good Friday. And I think it's a good idea that it's in regional Victoria. Matt and I have spoken about this before, but there is some with a different view. And John McArdle, who I just spoke to then, he brought up the idea of, well, having Sundays off instead of a week free, maybe Good Friday, because that's when the rest of society is traditionally on holidays or free as well. What do you think about that, Greg? I know that this is going to be well received by local people in the area, holiday makers, but when you hear someone like John McArdle say that, what's your reaction?
Well, it's interesting. I think a lot of people have various views on this. A lot of people that I know are actually looking for something to do on Good Friday. We've seen that the AFL introduced football. The North Melbourne and Western Bulldogs game is played here in Melbourne on that day. Adelaide played the Gold Coast. Melbourne Storm played in Melbourne. There was an NBL match. So there are a lot of people looking for something to do and for sport on Good Friday. We know that Perth Racing introduced Good Friday race meeting 4 years ago. It's one of their best attended meetings. They also race at Kalgoorlie in Western Australia now, and they get a very big crowd on Good Friday. And I think one of some of the feedback around the week off that we've had this week, Michael, is that program the meetings and then people make their own choices about whether or not they attend or participate. But I think there is a very large group in the community who are looking for sport and activity on Good Friday, and I think the Sale meeting is going to fulfil that. It's a great area to visit. Sale and Bairnsdale are our two racetracks up there, but whether you go past that to Paynesville, Lakes Entrance, Meetung, Raymond Island, take the kids across on the ferry to the koalas. Took my grandchildren up there just a few months ago, Easter of this year. It was brilliant. So I think the Good Friday discussion is one that people have various views in the general community. But again, I think a lot of people are looking for sport and something to get involved in on Good Friday.
And Greg, I think you've touched on something I absolutely agree with RV, is the personal choice of trainers. My response to John McArdle and others, and I think it's RV's response, would be, if you don't want to run on Good Friday, don't run on Good Friday. You can choose. You can have that day off. So just as the dust has settled a little bit more on this whole ongoing issue that's been going on for weeks now about probably about 80% of trainers, I'd say, anecdotally, don't agree with the week free off. And what you just said then would seem to be the going forward mindset of Racing Victoria, and that would be, we'll just put on the races and you guys can decide yourselves when you want to structure your time off.
Well, in actual fact, Matty, I've been quite impressed with it was very emotive, the discussion around the week off to begin with. Since then, we've had some really constructive feedback. It is our intention to go to not only trainers and their staff, but to everyone in the industry and get their feedback on the 5-day hiatus that we've just had. There's been plenty of discussion about, as you say, just put the meetings on and let everyone choose. There's been discussion about it's a good idea, but right at the end of July, when horses are being prepared for spring, is not the best timing. Move it to school holidays a little bit earlier in July. But as you say, there's been a great number of people who said, look, I know we say there's too much racing. I know we say there's more and more racing, and there hasn't been, because the number of race dates have stayed the same level for a number of years now. And I would say that the Good Friday meeting at Sale will not be an additional meeting. Sale were set to race on the Wednesday, so that meeting will move to the Friday with a feature program, but there won't be any additional meetings. So what we're going to do is go to participants, get their feedback on not only the 5 days off, but also the Christmas Eve race-free day that we had last year, which was very well received, and we'll listen to that feedback and let that shape how we go forward.
Greg, I'm sure there's going to be a lot taken out of this race-free week, and I think the fact that there's going to be more lines of communication and consultation and input is only a positive for the industry moving forward. Good news, Sale, they'll be wrapped in the local Gippsland area, that they will have the Good Friday meeting next year as well, and thanks for the update on the COVID situation as well.
It's a pleasure, Michael. I hope everyone enjoys the Valley on Saturday and the Grand National meeting on Sunday, and the $16 million in additional prize money.
See you later, Greg. Greg Carpenter there.